I have no language for my feelings, she said, and there's no way anybody else can understand it. And that morning, I did actually notice, though, and I made the comment of an old wives' tale. You know, what does this mean, this lightning and thunder in January? Because where I'm from, there's always the frogs in a certain part of the year and things like that. But I went to the door and opened the door because it was lightning and thunder carrying on so bad, and it was so warm for the second day of January. You know, I asked 2 or 3 people, you know, what could this mean? You know, I mean, there's got to be a tale of some sort, you know? Objectives. Students will recreate the historic process of making coal flowers. Like on arrival at the mine, I went into the bathhouse and changed out of my street clothes into my mining clothes, put on, you know, my hard hat and my mining belt and boots, my rental uniform, and, you know, we kind of sat around, joked with everybody, told stories and whatnot until it was time to go down over the hill. Proceeded over to the lamp house, got my earplugs, cleaned my safety glasses, checked my light out, and made sure it was working. Put it on. You went down over into the pit. Objectives. 2. Students make observation about the crystallization process that occurs during this craft. And 3. Understand the role that the practice of making coal flowers played in coal mining communities. Xia Wei has stopped tearing pages from the calendar hung on her broken wardrobe since Monday, when her father did not return from work. The teenager's 37-year-old father was one of the 244 miners who were underground on Monday at the Sunjiawan Colliery in the Liaoning province of Fuxing. As of yesterday, 210 of the 244 were reported dead from a gas explosion, and rescuers were still searching for 5 missing miners. For Xia Wei and her mother, Li Li, who declined to use their real names for fear of getting into trouble with the authorities, the past 2 days have been hell, without word of whether the father and husband was alive or dead. Although relatives kept close, Ms. Li wept uncontrollably and fell into moments of exhaustion, waiting for news of her husband. She knows in her heart that he is probably dead. I am not prepared at all. He just left suddenly, and this is still the Lunar New Year. Ms. Li almost yelled through the tears. Xia Wei, 14, held her mother's hands and sobbed quietly. They forced him to leave 300 yuan as a deposit so that if he did not return to work after the Lunar New Year, they would deduct 100 yuan each day, Xia Wei said. Now, what will happen to us? We have to look after old people and kids. Ms. Li said her husband started work as a coal miner 2 years ago because he wanted to earn more to pay their rent and Xia Wei's tuition fees. He used to be a security guard, but he only earned 400 yuan a month. Our daughter is growing up now and will soon go to secondary school, she said. That is why he began working as a miner and could earn about 1,000 yuan a month, Ms. Li's sister said. Otherwise, who would take such a job? It is a job for living people working in hell. National standards, national science education standards, science as inquiry, K through 4, 5 through 8. Abilities necessary to do scientific inquiry, physical science 5 to 8. Properties of matter and changes in properties of matter. So I looked up at the clock, and the clock's right there where you go in the door. And it was lightning and thundering really hard. And I opened the door and just raining to beat the band, And I shut the door and went that crack of thunder. My boss, Skip, or James Scott's his name. He looked at me and George and he said, "That felt like an explosion." That's exactly what he said. Open trucks filled with coffins made their way from mine to morgue through the streets of Fuxing, the freezing air thick with coal dust and smoke from paper money burned in offering. Throughout the day, convoys of buses carried mourners bundled against the cold into a cemetery sealed off by security. Zhang Weibo, a miner for more than 30 years, was the first to be cremated. I touched his forehead, checked his teeth, then took off his shoes and looked at his toes. It is him, but he is dead, his widow was quoted as saying. And that's just the first 12 pages of the book. I'm going to run through a number of the photos, just talk about them really briefly. They go back and forth between Ian's photos, like the last one, and mine from West Virginia. I did a number of trips to West Virginia. Shortly after the mine explosion, I got invited to a college, Davis and Elkins College, for their Visiting Writers Week. And I did some workshops with students and people in the community around Sago and what had happened, and also started shooting photos like this one right here. And we talk about what's happening in terms of financial purchases of one corporation for another. And this was not the Sago mine, but in the same community in West Virginia. And you see the sign, mining company incorporated, safety protects people, quality protects jobs. And it's been bought and sold so often and so quickly that they just spray paint out the name of the previous company in green. And that, we can tell from the sign that probably, I'm just guessing here, but probably if they can't afford to put a new sign up, the amount of money going into the safety protecting people is probably fairly minimal. Another one of Ian's, another one of mine. And one of the things that I really try to do with the book, and people say, is it poetry? Is it, the book was staged as the play? I'm usually speaking at labor history conferences and labor history departments rather than creative writing departments. What is the book? And I want to say that it's multiple things and that it takes from each of these areas, like what's really important about those areas. So, and one of the things it takes, I think, from poetry and from the book arts is that, my idea with the book was that not to do it every time so that it became the pattern, but fairly regularly throughout the book. Like in the first section where you have the miners sitting on the red bench, to use the spine of the page actually as a kind of transnational space where the reader would be forced, in a sense, to be looking at a photo from China while reading testimony from West Virginia, or vice versa, so that one would have to keep both of these things in their head at the same time. That one wouldn't be able to simply think about West Virginia without thinking about China, or to read about what was happening in China without thinking about